finally getting my voice back. It's been a long time coming. I think it's been about 11 days now where I've been without a voice pretty much. Very crazy. I don't know what kind of sickness was going on, but man, the longest time I thought I got the bird flu or something. I didn't think this was gonna go away. I think once I got to the weak point, like 7 days in, where I still didn't have a voice, I'm like, man, I think I'm gonna sound like RFK forever. Absolutely crazy. But yeah, I just thought that was gonna be what it was. I've never really lost my voice like that before, so it was a first time experience. Anyways, first things first, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the notification. I'm going to be going live a lot more soon. It's just I've been super busy. I haven't really been able to go live with my voice being how it was. It just wouldn't have been worth it. I just been really busy framing out my house, getting the roof done, and doing a lot of the grunt work I just really need to get done. So I wake up in the morning, man, I'm just work, and then at the end of the day, I'm tired. So this is going to be a pretty good stream for anybody interested in therapy adjacent type topics. First things first, if you want to go deeper into stuff I talk about, this is probably your first step. thesoftspokenShaman@gmail.com. If you want to pick it up, it's the first volume. It's a 5-volume series. Definitely recommend checking it out. You hit me up if you have any questions. So first things first, I'm having I guess you'd call it a consultation type of call with a gentleman yesterday. And this is the first time we've spoken. And the topic we're talking about is something that's come up so much recently. And before I get into it, I'm going to preface this with I noticed on my FYP on TikTok. And I've talked to my friend, other people, and they've also noticed the same thing. On TikTok, they're really trying to get people to think that they have autism or ADHD. There's this really pronounced movement on TikTok where they want you to feel like you are messed up. They want you to feel like you're neurodivergent, like you have ADHD or autism. And you kind of have to wonder why. What's the agenda here with trying to get everybody to feel like they're different? And obviously, if everybody feels like they're special, then they're more of an entitled snowflake, and all that jazz. But I think that ultimately, because the economy the way it is and everything, the weird drones in the sky in New Jersey and all that, there's this climate, Bitcoin being over 100 grand. There's this whole climate where everything's on the precipice of something major happening. And as a result of that, everybody is just miffed. Everybody just feels like they're on the edge, on the precipice, And so people are, when this happens, things like this happen, they feel like they're misunderstood, like there's something off about them, And so I think TikTok is really capturing this fact that people just feel like, man, is there something wrong with me? I even hear in my own life, I hear normal people, clearly neurotypical people going, man, am I autistic? Like, is my brain wired differently? And you're like, no, dude, you're normal. But the main thing is that there's so many people now who are susceptible to this, wondering if they're neurodivergent or autistic or ADHD. Yeah, I've never really seen anything like before. 2024 really seems to be the year, especially the end of this year, where everybody's second guessing if they're neurotypical or not. They're all taking autism tests online, trying to figure out if they are or they aren't. It's the wildest thing ever. But that segues into the topic of this, which is, for men, but for women too. A lot of people who are having problems in life, a lot of people who are having problems either fitting in or progressing in their life, feeling like they're hitting major milestones, feeling like they're successful. The main problem is that they don't have a relationship with their dad. And it's something I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist, and so I don't give therapy. And I have to say that as a provider, I guess, or a disclaimer. But I do talk to a bunch of people, and I guess you could say it's counseling in a way. I can't tell you how many guys I talk to, man, where they tell me about their problems, and their problems are actually not insurmountable. And then I always ask them, I don't make it apparent what I'm getting at, but I always ask them, and it always comes out that they don't really have a relationship with their dad. They don't really talk to their dad, like a wall between them and their dad. And the thing I always try to tell them is, listen, you never know when your parents are going to die. You have to, because all of our connections with our mom is, at least in the Western world, we're all connected to our mom. It's so easy, the connection, the maternal connection. But what's really hard is the paternal connection. Freud, has gone into this in a sidelong way, and some other psychologists and psychotherapists and psychiatrists and stuff. There seems to be, at least in the West, a point of like, there's this shame between father and son. And I don't think it's natural, because I talk to the Amish, I live near the Amish, I deal with the Amish a lot, and I ask them this question. There's no shame between the father and the son. But in our world, in the secular, there's a shame. And I think you all know what I'm talking about. Like this weird, can I talk to my dad about that? Can I be open with my dad? Can I like be chummy, like be a buddy with my dad? Like, a lot of walk on eggshells with their dad. And, I'm not the only one to talk about this. Jesse Lee Peterson is one person who does talk about how the relationship with the father is so important. I agree with him that we talk about the father, especially in Christianity and Judeo-Christian religion, the father, the God is the father, right? And I feel like the way to get to God is not to ignore God. But in order to get God, man, you got to forget about everything religious. You got to get to your dad, man. You got to connect with your father, but you can't really even be a good person until you've really like mastered who your dad is, like figuring out who your dad is, like who he is person, like, man, I always say, and this is it's an emotional topic for so many people to talk about, but this is why the holiday season is so important. Oftentimes, anytime you're around your dad, your mom, it can be whatever trigger. There's something that'll cause them to tell a story about their life that you've never heard. And it's so important to hear stories. It's so important to hear everything you can from your mom and your dad. It's so imperative. And I really want to make myself clear, because if you're lucky enough to still have your parents with you, man, you have to get those stories from them. Learn about, how your mom and dad met. Learn about who your mom and dad were when they were children, when they were adolescents. This is the stuff. They're your blood. These stories matter, because who your mom and dad were are very much connected to who you are, and, if you're having problems in your life, oftentimes you'll find that, like the Bible says, the sins of the father passed down. Well, also, the joy, the beatitude, the skills of the father and mother passed down too. So the more you learn about your mom and dad, the more you can start putting the pieces together about who you are, And man, I see way too many guys who are going on like the autistic or NEAT or their INCEL sort of pipeline. And I really don't think it has to be that way. I think a lot of it just comes down to they're timid, they're too scared to broach that wall between them and their dad. Because, I think a lot of dads, especially Boomer and Gen X dads, they don't even know what they're doing, man. They're like very laissez-faire. They'll let the son do their thing, but they're not going to be the one to like broach these real life, like tough subjects. So I think now in our generation and younger, we've got to be the stronger people, and we've got to reach out to our dad, and we've got to close that gap and talk to our dad about stuff, whatever, things maybe your dad, he might not want to talk about, or he might not think to talk about because he sees it as more being emotional or whatever. But I think you'd be so surprised. For those of you who think that you observed dad or like a hands-off dad, that if you just take the first step, you're you'll be surprised at how your dad will be like, oh wow, and they'll want to actually connect with you more. So it's just one of those things, I really feel like the fatherhood is so obscured in this society. What it means to be a father, what it means to be a son. Motherhood is talked about all the time. There's really nothing mystified there, which is why I don't really feel it's warranted to talk about. But I really feel like to become a better person, to become, everything that you can be, skill set wise, emotional intelligence wise, it all comes from understanding your dad, and it all comes from acceptance from your dad. I think if you want to stay on the straight and narrow, I advocate don't even look into. Who cares about morality, like religious morality or anything like that? The real morality is this, and hear me out. The real morality is, would your dad be proud of you doing that? So if you're thinking about should I or shouldn't I do that, ask yourself, my dad be proud of me doing that? And it's amazing how very quickly that will keep you on the straight and narrow. Now, hey, maybe your dad's a POS. I don't know. Some guys are born into situations like that. But assuming your dad is your typical mild-mannered dad, just think about that. Would my dad approve of this? I think that's very, very important. Just even for your own sense of maturing and individuating, or whatever you want to call it, coming of age, is would my dad be proud of what I do? Would my dad be accepting of what I do? Because as a man, it's so funny because so many men search for female approval. But I'm telling you, what nobody talks about is you won't search for female approval. You won't simp, you won't need female approval anymore if you go after the approval of your dad. That's the approval you really want. And that's the one thing no one talks about. The approval of your dad is, it's your lifeline, it's your savings, it's what's gonna level you up, help you ascend. Getting in lockstep with your dad brings you to a whole new level. I'm telling you, man. If you do something and your dad congratulates you, or if your dad tells you that he's proud of you, you're over the moon. You're over the moon. And so that should teach you right there. That's what you go after. Now, maybe you don't have your dad in your life or whatever. Maybe he's deceased or whatever. Your uncle, your grandpa, and if you don't have anybody who's blood related, then the best mentor you can find, that's your surrogate dad. But you have to, even if you don't have your biological dad in your life or whatever, you have to create a dad. You have to have a dad figure in your life, because it's the only thing that keeps a young man on the straight and narrow, in my opinion. I need to give my voice a rest for a couple minutes. If you guys have comments or questions, feel free to super chat that, and I will respond in kind. Give me a minute or two. I need to drink some liquid, man, and before I continue. I'll be back though. All right, well, that helps. The other thing to remember too is remembering how much your mom and dad have sacrificed for you. That's another thing that will keep you on the straight and narrow. It will help you stay moral as much as possible, to help you, try to reach your milestones, your goals in life, and try to become, obviously, the best version of yourself, is to really, truly think about and understand how much they sacrifice for you. Because that's, at the end of the day, I wish there was a better definition for it, But really, the best way to talk about, parental love is in terms of sacrifice. Unless, they're like absolutely wealthy or whatever. But if they're not, then sacrifice is kind of the metric for their love in a way, I mean, what my parents sacrificed, for, uh, you know, uh, my music career and stuff like that is unreal, and the support and all that. So it's best to in terms of gratitude, remember that, how much your parents have sacrificed for you, how much they've supported you. And if they haven't, well, that's another nut to crack, you know. But these are very important things that people take for granted and they really don't think about. But these are the things that keep you humble, and these are the things that keep your nose to the grindstone, that help you, become better. Um, because I've noticed the people that I talk to, the people that I do calls with, it's always the same thing, man. It's always they're stuck. In some degree, they're stuck. And, when I get deeper into their background, it's always in a strange relationship with their dad, or some weird kind of like passive aggressive, they don't talk to their dad. And that's a problem. That's a real problem, because you're going to find, especially as a young man, you're going to hit a wall if you don't have an open line of communication with your dad. Now, women too. There's plenty of there who have a toxic relationship with their dad, where they hit their dad up for money, they manipulate him. That's not a good relationship with their dad. But you will find that women who have a good relationship with their dad, those are typically the best women that you'll find, right? Because it goes both ways. It's not just for sons, it's for daughters too. When the daughter has a good open line of communication with the father, that means she's rooted, she's based in reality, she's emotionally regulated. And really think about it in your life. The women who do have good relationships with their father are typically not your space cadet women, not your women on OF. These are women who would never think of doing things like that. They're based in reality. And it's the same thing if you got a good, solid, foundational relationship with dad as a man, is you won't go down, the path line, the pathway of drug addiction, or, other behaviors where you're lashing out. Because why do guys lash out when they're young in particular? It's because they feel like their dad's not around. Whether, you're in a single mom household, or your dad's deceased, or whether your dad's just working all the time. You feel like he's not around. And that's really, really why guys, why young men or children even lash out. That's the reason. Because once you have a good relationship with your dad, there really is no reason to lash out. Now, the other thing is that you should come to terms with the fact that your parents did the best they could, no matter what. That even if it wasn't good enough, your parents did the best they could. And you really should. If your dad is a hero to you, if your dad is your hero, I guarantee you live a pretty good life. If your dad's your hero, pretty solid life. But if you don't think of your dad that way, I really tell guys, really try to think about who your dad is as a person, and really try to forgive, any sort of grief or bad blood you may have, because a man really cannot, in my opinion, become the best man he can be if he doesn't view his dad as his hero, right? I mean, that's really how it should be. Just like we see God as the Father, as this magical being, I mean, in a smaller, more terrestrial way, you should see your dad as the same thing. Your dad is your hero. Your dad is, the buck stops there. Your dad is the guy who could figure anything out. He can figure out the solution to a problem. He can build things. He can fix things. I remember the first place I built, the first little house built in California. My mom and dad came out to visit, and I was having trouble hanging one of my doors, because it really wasn't even a one-person thing. It was a two-person thing. But my dad helped me hang the door, and it was a great experience. Me and my dad got to work together on that, and it was a really great experience. We really had a good time, and it's a memory that I'll cherish always. So, your dad should be your hero, And again, you never know, when your parents are gonna go. You need to try to create as many memories as you can. Uh, because like I said, if you're not, some of you have acquaintance with death, but some of you haven't. Some of you, nobody in your life has died yet. And I'll tell you, the regret that you'll feel is otherworldly. So, I always put it out there. One of the best public service announcements I can make is to make amends with your dad, have an open line of communication with your dad, and just have a close relationship with your dad, because you will never regret that. But if you don't do that, you'll always regret it. And man, I had a conversation with a guy who's been a subscriber for about 4 years now. Dude, it was a hard conversation to have. This guy was on the phone with me. He was crying for the whole hour. Because we had talked back in 2020, and I had given him this advice back then, and he fought me the whole way. It was not a productive conversation. He fought me the whole way, and I said, listen, man, just hear me out, and just take my advice. Just do it. It took 4 years, man. This guy called me, and he was so overjoyed, because he called me, he apologized. He's like, hey, man, I'm so sorry for being a dick, but I took your advice. It took a while, and lo and behold, the problems this guy was having 4 years ago, those problems are a thing of the past. And now he's got a good relationship with his dad, and everything's going good in his life. So, I asked him if he wanted to do a stream with me, and he wanted to be kept anonymous, which is okay. But, it's just a testimonial to the fact that this is really, in my opinion, the best advice for a young man is to get past those blockages with your dad. Because if you don't, you're going to regret it. And the problem with regret is it's final. No refunds. Regret is final. And all you can do with regret, you can't take anything back. All you can do is cope. And as we all know, there are so many things in life that we got to cope with as it is. The one thing you don't want to cope with is the finality of death, and the fact that you can't get more time with a person that you wish you would have mended things with before they passed. So, one of my claims to fame is always bringing people's attention back to that clock, tick tock, in your life, and that finite time we all have. In my books, I talk about it all the time. Death as your ride or die companion, death as your road dog, death always on your shoulder, not as something morbid, but as just a gentle reminder of maybe you shouldn't put that off till tomorrow. Maybe you should call your dad today and take that step. That's something that I highly recommend. Gotta take a drink again, man. Keep losing my voice. I'm getting my voice back. The longer I talk, it gives out. Hopefully that'll help a little bit. This is a topic I'll go deeper at a later time. But like I said, also, I do private calls with people who like to talk about this stuff and want to remain anonymous. But I think it's so important, man. Listen, I'm a realist, I care about people, but I'm also, I care about myself naturally. I'm a natural person. I care about myself first, but I do care about other people too. And I feel like that problem for most guys, it's just not coming to terms with the father, dude. Ed J, thank you, man. Guerrilla Gospel, 100%. Um, as a man, the hardest thing to do is be a man. Yep, 100%, man. And that's why I'm going to do more topics like this because, like, it's such a shame that to talk like this, it's so taboo for guys, but it really shouldn't, because we gotta keep each other on the straight and narrow. We gotta keep each other sane, and I think the best way to keep each other sane is to like share strategies, and the strategy that's the hardest is always the one that's the truest, and it's goes right back to dad. Ed J with a 2-hour super chat. Thank you so much, man. He says, I really enjoy your lives. Always good topics. Well, thank you so much, man. I do appreciate that 100%. And man, like I try to talk about stuff that just hits home, and for this, it's just, this is the one thing that I just, I talk, I talk to people quite frequently, and it just seems that, no matter what problems a guy has, it just always goes back to the father. I'm very lucky where I have a good relationship with my dad. My dad is, he's a really bright guy. And so, he works, so it was not always the closest relationship, but as I've gotten older and my interests have become wider than just music, my relationship with my dad has gotten really good. And I'm just, from my own experience, as your relationship with your dad blossoms, and I know that sounds silly and it sounds like cliche and like Hallmark, whatever, but really, as it blossoms, you become more chill and rooted, and things don't bother you as much. Because, like I said, if your dad approves, what the hell do you care about anybody else? Because that's the one thing that's going to give you the approval and the validation that you so desperately want as a young man. You know what I mean? And like I said, a lot of us go female approval, and that's not always the worst thing. Like female approval has its purpose and its place, but I feel like a lot of the time the guys who go overboard with female approval, it's really putting off getting in touch with their dad and really getting their approval that matters. Ed J says, yeah, you always get to the jugular unlike any other channel on this platform. This live really resonated with me heavy. Hey, man, I'm really happy that you said that. And that's the reason that I wanted to do this live today, because I felt like, man, this is going to be a topic that, really is going to hit hard. And I plan on talking about this topic more from different angles, because there's a lot to flesh out about it. And I feel like it's going to give guys like closure, man, and just like give people peace. And that's the best thing, is just have peace, because it don't matter, if you're broke, you're rich, you're enjoying your life, you're sick, you're healthy, as long as you have peace, you can get through things, you can cope, you can have an all right life as long as you have peace. And in my opinion, fast track to peace is through the father, really, is through a good relationship with your father. And the reason why I'm not downplaying the relationship with a mother, because that's so important too, but the only reason I'm not talking about it as much in this live is because I feel in our kind of matriarchal society, most of our relationships with our mother are kind of like baked in to childhood, where, of course, like, all of us have good relationships with our mom for the most part, unless she's crazy or whatever, but most of us do. It's the dad who's always behind the scenes. Mom is always our first point of contact. When you're a child and you want something, who's the first person you go shake down? Is mom. You're always kind of scared to go ask dad, right? Why is that? And unfortunately, I think I'm going to end this soon just because my voice is kind of giving out. But I'm going to go into that tomorrow, is why do we tiptoe around dad when we're a child? And why do we go to mom for everything? And when we get to the root of that, we're gonna find some deep stuff to really go through. But once again, I really hope you guys enjoyed this live. I really appreciate the support for the channel too. Likewise, if you want to go deeper, you can always email me at thesoftspokenshaman@gmail.com. Like I said, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I do calls with people, and do try to help people to the best of my ability. And the other thing is, I write books, as you all know. I feel like my stuff can help people out, has helped people out. And that's really the plan here. So if you want to reach out, thesauconshaman@gmail.com. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed the live. I'm going to rest my voice up because tomorrow I'm probably going to do a live tomorrow evening. And I hope you guys enjoy that too. So you all take care.